You're fired.
Welcome back, contractors and freelancers alike. I hope you enjoyed my intro. If the intro was not entertaining or disturbing in some way, then I didn't do my job right. But if it was and you're here, then I welcome you to today's episode of Contract Lancer. Today we're going to be talking about my time working at a private prison industry. Yes, I worked in one of these places before, and then I got clapped. Clapped being getting fired in this case, not the other meaning. No. This is baby YouTube now. We can't use those meanings. So, that time I got clapped or got fired was when I was working at a private prison company back when I was in the US. So, this story will help you, first understand a little bit how the private prison industry works. I hope that's a little bit entertaining for you, and also help you figure out when you're about to get canned, when you're about to get clapped. The signs that things are not boding well for you, and you should start looking at the door and start running to that next opportunity, because that is just the life of a contractor or freelancer or anyone, really. You gotta look out for yourself in this world. So, a wee bit of backstory here. Your friendly contract lancer was making almost six figures, about six figures more or less. And you know what? It was okay. And then one day I saw this opportunity. It was to work for a private prison industry. Now, when I looked at the numbers, when I looked at the job, and the recruiter came up to me and said, this is how much we're going to pay you. It is a 3-month rolling contract, so we have to pay you, a little bit more. So this is the amount of money we're going to pay you. And then they showed me the contract. And I'm like, yeah! So I said yes. And I said, okay, I'll try for the interview. So I went to the interview and I crushed it. I used all the interview techniques that I learned over time, the interview techniques that I have up here to show you, and I got this job. And you know what? I looked at that contract and I went, that was almost 50% more than what I was making. So I was just raking in the money on this job, at least until I got fired, right? And I got fired very quickly. At least it felt very quick to me. So before I get to the signs of you getting fired, let's get into a little bit of what the private prison industry does, at least for us programmers. Obviously, it has to do with some software, right? So what exactly do we program for the private prison industry? Believe it or not, some of these private prisons have tablets for their inmates. Weird, isn't it? They have like these little cheapy tablets, Android tablets, I believe, and that's what you program for. You program for these tablets, and then for some of the computer terminals as well, they have about the same technology, more or less. And whoever the client is will have these tablets that they lease from the company I used to work for. And the prisoners would have access to movies, games, and communication in the form of video calls and messaging to the outside world through these tablets. There is, of course, one little caveat. Everything that you do on this tablet is not only recorded, but also costs them money. So if they want to rent a movie, they have to rent it and use their own real money. If they want to play a game, it costs money. If they want a video call, it costs money. If they want a message, it costs money. If they want an email, it costs money. Everything costs money for these prisoners. Now, I have my way of feeling about this, and I'm not a big fan of putting microtransactions in a private prison. I'm not a fan of private prisons in general, but who am I to talk considering that I took the money and worked for one? So, hypocrite? Yes. Absolutely. But don't worry, this hypocrite got his just desserts very soon. In fact, this 3-month rolling contract lasted up until maybe the 3rd month, and then I got fired. So, in other words, I got clapped.
Please clap.
What are the warning signs of you getting clapped? This is very, very good advice for you guys out there, because you might have never gotten fired. This is the first time I got fired. So I didn't know what I was looking for. However, the signs were obvious in hindsight. So let's go over some things that I saw. I can't go over things in too much detail. I can't even tell you who I worked for, just in case the NDAs get a little messy, because who knows? I don't know how long the NDAs last, and I don't want to get in trouble. So just assume I worked for a private prison industry back in the US and that this happened. in the private industry, I saw some signs that things were not going to go well for me. Unfortunately, there were some signs that I was about to get fired, and I just didn't know it yet. I know them now, and I hope that these will help you in your future endeavors. And if you see these signs, then I hope that you start looking for a new job, start looking for the door, start looking for your new opportunities, because you only have to look out for yourself as a contractor or a freelancer. So, when I was working for the private prison company, I was not assigned much development work. Odd for a developer, right? That is a bad sign. Bad sign for both you and, the company management that is supposed to give you work. Normally the way things work is that when a developer comes on board, usually there's stuff to do. There's a project ready to go and you have to do something on that project. It's typically fine that if you get light stuff to do in order to get used to how they do things, to get used to the tech stack that they have, how they do, their pull requests, how they do their programming, how their whole framework is for that company. But they didn't do that. Instead, they assigned me some work that I knew I couldn't do. I didn't sign up for this work. This is more like a system admin thing. And it looks like the work that they were handing out to me was system admin stuff. System admin stuff needs software that's different from what we usually use, and also privileges. I didn't have those privileges as I was new, and I was not on board for a system admin position. So I was really out of my element when I did this. I was not hired for this initially, and I couldn't do this job or that kind of stuff. There was some development stuff, but not very much, which is also a bad sign. So if you see that in your line of work that you're not getting that much work to do, or that there are things that they're handing you but you cannot do it, then that's not a good sign. That's red flag number 1. Red flag number 2 is that from the development work that I was given, there were things in there that stood out to me that they should know that could not be done. Like the technology that they had, the tech stack that they had, could not support the features they wanted, and no one told them this, or no one let them know that it was not possible. And I had to be the one to say, hey, you can't do it with this technology. If you want to do it with something, you have to use X, Y, and Z or whatever. Whenever you do have to say no to something, always give them a reason why, or always give them another solution. It usually looks better for you, because you don't want to just be seen as a guy that says no. But if they ask you for something that's impossible with what they have, then the only other option is to get other things that can do it, which I tried arguing, but they said no, and that just made me look like the bearer of bad news. It made me look bad, and you don't want to be that. Office politics is a real thing, and how you present yourself is also going to be how people will perceive you and your value to the company. So unfortunately, sometimes you're going to pay for another person's mistakes just because of this. And the final sign that I saw that I was about to get fired, about to get clapped, is when there was no more work at some point. It's kind of odd when developers have no work. I've never been in a situation where they were desperately looking for a developer, and yet there's no work for them to do. That never happens. And you know what happens when you have no more work? You're not going to have a job. That's what happens. So went from very little development work or non-development work to work that can't be done, and then finally just no work at all. That's not a good sign. That is not a very healthy path for you to be on when you're in a company. That is a recipe for disaster for you. So for me, all this happened within the span of 3 months, and then I was fired after the third month. So obviously never renewed my contract. I did tell my recruiter what happened and stuff, but they never took me on ever again. So there might have been some other reasons in the background that I just don't know about, to be fair to the company as much as possible. But honestly, I've worked in other industries before, and ever since, I'm way better off now than I was then. So I know that I can do the job that I set out to do, just saying. And I hope they get their shit together. Anyways, if any takeaway that you should get from this is that if you find yourself in a position where you're getting less and less work, or work that is just unrelated to what you do, start looking for the door. It is not a good place to be, and you should really start looking for other opportunities for yourself as a contractor or a freelancer, especially if you take on these really risky jobs. I took the risk, I saw the money, and I lit up like a Christmas tree, but obviously I got burned on the end, and that was all my fault. So don't ever blame them. It's always you. You always have the final decision to make that job, and you decide to stay or go on your own terms, unless they fire you. But it is what it is. As contractors, we have to get used to that. As contractors, we have to understand that it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and that companies will use us, and it is up to us to use the companies instead. Know what I mean? Well, that's it for today. I think I'm gonna get into more of my little stories, because I didn't just work for a private prison industry and then work for the government or whatever. I have worked for many other industries, so I might get into that in these other videos. Until then, I'll see you later, contractors and freelancers. This has been Contract Lancer, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.